Hi everyone and welcome back. I am super excited that my last video blew up, so excellent thanks to all those of you who watched that, or even a portion of it. I know it was really, really long, and I know a few hundred views is probably not blowing up for any other channel of size, but we are small, and I am appreciative of everyone who has joined up. Maybe we will get to 50 people before the end of the calendar year, which would be awesome, but if not, that's totally okay too, because half of this is just to force me to read these articles. Today we're going to be talking about President Trump's plans for how AI is going to impact our workforce. And there's some interesting stuff in here. I already went through, read and highlighted it, so I'm going to just focus on those highlighted areas. And yes, some of you will see that I highlight a little too much sometimes. That's to at least keep some consistency on what the heck is going on in this document. So more talking this time, less reading. I know my husband had to listen to me read the last one out loud. He was like, "You read audibly way too fast." And I'm like, "I have ADHD, so I have to speed everyone else's audio up. So if you have a problem with how quick I speak, feel free to slow the audio down. There are controls for that in YouTube." Anyway, without further ado, America's talent strategy, building the workforce for the golden age. Because it's the T-Man, so everything has to be amazing and wonderful. And no, I cannot do a Trump voice, so we are not going to do that. And we're going to hear a lot about these three departments, labor, commerce, and education, that funded this report. And we have a nice table of contents, and normally I would read the executive summary and then just point other stuff out, but I'm going to try and hopefully in half an hour capture the majority of what the argument is. So we require a workforce system capable of propelling American workers into high-wage careers, upholding the dignity of hard work, which I am kind of sort of laughing at because we're also trying to kick people off the welfare system at the same time. And trying to also, well, we'll see. They refer to the dignity of hard work quite a bit, but then part of me is like, how does that relate to AI? Anyway, industry-driven strategies will be achieved by scaling the registered apprenticeship programs and other high-quality work-based learning models to align education training to career pathways, targeting our investments toward employer-led upskilling initiatives designed to fill talent shortages in priority industries. And we'll get into a little bit more nitty-gritty in a little while about registered apprenticeships, but on the one hand, I kind of like the idea of doing more like work on-site transfer into actual jobs. On the other hand, part of me, well, we'll see in the detail here where he talks about like dismantling certain things in order to make this work. My other critique right here is this lovely discussion of whether the college for all approach has failed. It actually hasn't failed. The problem with the college for all approach was simply that at least 20 years ago when I went into college, or older, we won't talk, it was sort of sold to all of us bright kids as like something you had to do. And I, in particular, really did not want to go to college. And I spent a lot of my time because my dad was a single parent, and basically told me I was going to have to go to college and spend a lot of time earning great grades so I could get, not transcript scholarships and grants and all that exciting stuff. But I was an undecided for like a year and a half when I first got to my undergraduate college. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing, and I kind of went because my dad was like, it's my college I went to, so whatever you pick, it'll have a great program, and I'm like, yeah. And then it turns out later in life I end up picking like the undergraduate major that almost every single conservative makes fun of now instead of English majors. But I think the problem isn't really college for all. I think the problem was blindly telling people that, like, look, the stats show that if you have a college degree, you'll make more. Because what happened is we have, like, bachelor degree bloat, and then that leads to master's degree bloat, which is happening in most of my fields, and then we end up with a whole bunch of PhD people that have PhDs for no particularly good reason other than the fact that you had to distinguish yourself from the master students. So, yeah, college for all is not the approach that failed. It was the fact that nobody explained to people going in that, like, it helps to have some idea of what you want to get out of it. And I think that's why, like, gap years, like, if my dad had actually let me take a gap year and get my head kicked in a couple of times, I probably would have had more of an appreciation for going to college. Because that's what happened between, like, college and my first graduate student program. I spent 3 years getting kicked in the head in sales, metaphorically. And that had me going, like, maybe I do want to go back and actually like focus on a degree that actually gets me an applicable job as opposed to the generic literature, science, and the arts degrees that don't necessarily track one to one with the job. So yeah, you shouldn't just go to college to go to college. It's a great experience and it is well worth it, but um, you need to have an idea of what you want to get out of it. And I think it's a little bit better if you're older than opposed to being a traditional student. Because being a traditional student feels very much like an extension of growing up, because the college, and local apprentice and all that exciting stuff about how they care for you and how they take care of you and that sort of thing, which is another reason I think my dad was so quick to ship me off to college, because it's like, I can't take care of you, but here is a semi-structured environment for your neurodiverse self that might have, the ability to keep you in check. Because I'll admit, if I had been thrown out, which was the threat, if I didn't go to college, like, you are leaving the house, or you are paying rent for $500 a month, plus your own food, to stay here, and you have to follow my own rules, because my dad was sick of me. So if I had done that, I probably would have a greater appreciation for going to college. So yeah, I think the college for all approach is not what it was. I think it was just sold without a lot of people questioning it. Anyway, I'm sorry. I went way too digressing on that. We're already in like 6 minutes. Anyway, worker mobility will be achieved by clearly identifying credentials that are valued in the labor market to support informed decision making, integrating AI-powered tools and competency-based assessments that allow workers to advance based on demonstrated skills and abilities, and getting the disconnected workforce into training. Yeah, that's good. Self-sufficiency, always good. Another pillar is integrated systems, which will be achieved by immediately working to streamline program administration, simplify governance requirements, to empower states to integrate disparate funding streams and improve service delivery. Make America skilled again. Yeah, we're great with the Make America proposals. And reorganizing federal statistical agencies within the Department of Commerce. And there's more detail on this in a little minute. But that's actually a good goal, because if there's anything our government is great at, it is redundancy. Accountability, so billions of dollars are spent every year without reliable, inconsistent mechanisms to measure success or hold programs accountable when they fail. Very true. The pillar of accountability will be achieved by reforming or eliminating ineffective programs and redirecting funding to programs that demonstrate success in connecting Americans with high-wage jobs. Sounds like a good idea, right? All taxpayer-funded workforce reserved for individuals who are authorized to work. I'm going to have to put a little pause in here to try to get my hiccups cured. I swear, something about my body and trying to talk, it has to automatically malfunction. Anyway, pillar reform and intellectual. Oh yeah, the taxpayer workforce services being reserved for individuals who are legally authorized to work, which is the friendly way of saying no undocumented folks. We don't want to help them because, God forbid, the newcomers get, acclimated and pushed into nice, high-paying jobs that can pay more taxes. Meh. Flexibility and innovation will be achieved by leveraging existing statutory authorities to promote flexibility and innovation, prioritizing AI literacy and skills across the workforce, and developing pilot projects to drive rapid reskilling and fuel other AI-era innovations. And let's get into the meat. So the challenge is that, again, and I already went on a side trick about the college for all model. That's not really true, but that's how they portray it. But it's approached to be able to meet the needs of both employment and workers. And so the Trump administration is going to address the following challenges. Like reliable talent pipelines. So we're going to start with a new set of national objectives, including reshoring American industries to gain economic sovereignty and building American talent across the AI ecosystem. Yeah, the reshoring thing has been particularly interesting because part of me understands and respects that we have to do it for security reasons, but on the other hand, limiting free trade does make us poorer. So it's tough. Forgotten in the midst of decades of failed federal workforce programming is the reality that it is the companies themselves and not the government that determine the skill sets and competencies for job seekers to be adequately qualified for a position. Yeah, the government doesn't tell you who to hire. This is not a top-down communist system. Another challenge is that Americans remain disconnected from high-wage career paths, again, back to college for all, and the patchwork of non-college programs targeting occupation-specific skills is inadequate to replace it. Yes and no, it depends, because a lot of, for example, badging and registration agencies and that sort of thing, I would argue with the president that inadequate, especially if they're coming from industry leaders like Google and things like that. And in our case, with our super exciting, exceptional campus that I always call a souped up community college, um, we have tailored our programs essentially to get you a job. We have a very small like literature, science, and the arts requirement. I mean, not that people can't major in that, but yeah, most of our people come here with a goal to actually get out and get a job X, as opposed to my experience where we just are like, we're going to college and we're gonna figure it out. Not that there's anything wrong with being undecided. I tell plenty of students every year that I'm like, it's okay to be undecided. Lord knows I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got here. Anyway, with millions of experienced workers retiring and fewer younger workers entering the pipeline to replace them, it is imperative that more Americans enter the labor market. Yeah, Gen Z, you need to get off your booty and get with it. Like, nobody really likes getting up every day in order to do capitalism, but we all agree to do it. You should too. Another challenge is that the workforce system is fragmented. Programs that serve similar purposes often have incompatible rules, siloed data systems, huge issue, and duplicative administrative requirements. And despite widespread recognition of the need for integration, federal law and regulation continue to lock states and agencies into rigid programmatic silos. As a result, workforce dollars are spent through disconnected channels, limiting impact and frustrating both the entities that deliver the services and the individuals and businesses that rely on them. The other challenge is there's no accountability. Data collection is inconsistent across agencies, and outcomes are often delayed or obscured by compliance-driven reporting, and providers face few consequences for failing to connect participants to high-wage jobs. Yeah, I do like this whole assessment thing. I mean, it's going to possibly come back to bite some people in the butt, but I do like the idea of doing assessment. Like, do you actually get people jobs, or do you just talk about it? Policymakers lack the tools to understand where those investments are creating impact, and states have limited flexibility to direct funding toward high performing models and little incentive to remove the ineffective programs from the eligible training provider lists because, you're getting the money anyway. Enjoy government granting. Another challenge is AI is transforming work faster than the system can adapt. Very true. We need to keep up with that. All right, here's the vision. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry if you had to skip ahead to 12 minutes. So, to usher in the golden age, we're going to invest and celebrate the inherent dignity of hard work. And I highlighted this because part of me keeps going back and forth. I'm like, if we're going to embrace AI, doesn't that negate the idea of doing hard work? Because AI is doing the thinking for you, kind of like how we use machines to do heavy lifting and that sort of thing. Anyway, just a thought. So, industry-driven strategies. The government should seek businesses' help to co-design work-based training and credentialing opportunities, including registered apprenticeships for new and incumbent workers. I like that we're including incumbent workers. So few places nowadays actually promote from within. Federal workforce investments must prioritize talent pathways that start with companies identifying critical, hard-to-fill demand applications with high wages that can be immediately filled upon successful completion of a training program by an aspiring worker. To support continuous learning and career resilience, training investments must be coordinated across businesses, educational institutions, joint labor management partnerships, and workforce agencies. And the Trump administration will prioritize support with pathways with clearly defined destinations, including those that feature explicit employer validation and offer job guarantees, interview guarantees, or other mechanisms that ensure training leads directly to job employment opportunities. Okay, if there's a weird jump in this, I am sorry. It is because I thought I was recording and hit the record button again, but I didn't, so I just talked to myself for the next gosh knows how many minutes. So let's try this again. The industries Trump has in mind are semiconductors, aerospace, shipbuilding, biopharmaceuticals, data centers, and energy production. Meeting these companies' short-term and long-term needs requires the workforce system to invest earlier and more intentionally in building career pathways starting in middle school with exposure to real occupations and extending through high school and beyond with registered apprenticeships and industry-aligned training. Federal funding will prioritize results, rewarding programs that place workers directly into apprenticeships or other work-based learning opportunities that lead to in-demand jobs. And middle school does sound a bit young. However, I remember doing a whole bunch of career exploration in middle school before we went to high school and started even having the ability to pick like the classes we wanted to take. So it was helpful, but it also wasn't helpful because it totally did not foreshadow any of the careers I got into. But it is good to do, especially if you're doing the aptitude tests and that sort of thing. Maybe I was privileged. I don't know. All right, second pillar is worker mobility. Federal investments must deliver a next generation workforce and labor market intelligence system that is timely, localized, and actionable. The system should help people see their skills, understand career options, and take clear steps toward better jobs. Employers should be able to use the same system to find qualified talent and make faster, smarter, and hiring decisions. To serve workers and employers, digital tools must be simple, effective, and built for adoption and scale. Success depends not on technical sophistication, but on whether these systems help people move into better jobs and help businesses hire more efficiently. The system must promote reemployment and career mobility through multiple avenues: work-based learning, short-term credentials, stackable training opportunities, and pathways that recognize prior experience and demonstrated ability. Yes, the thing about scaling and being able to be easy enough for adoption, I am totally for that. One of the things that used to frustrate the heck out of me when I was still job searching was how you could tell every single university I was applying to had literally the exact same software, and there was no nice centralized place where you could just put your information and then just hit apply like you can with big sites like an Indeed. All right, integrated systems. The American workers should be able to access training and employment opportunities without getting lost in a maze of government agencies or confusing websites. Good luck. State and local leaders should be able to coordinate across funding streams without being stifled by duplicative mandates or disconnected systems. And the Department of Labor must lead the coordination and implementation of all federal workforce development efforts to prevent taxpayer dollars from being squandered on bloated administration functions across duplicative levels of government. And that's one of the things I think they said around when Elon Musk left, was in order to like rebuild the American government for an AI universe that essentially has to be taken completely apart, because we have a lot of duplicative bureaucracy and we don't mind that because people get paid. Federal agencies will also offer modular utilities that reduce duplicative paperwork, make it easier to coordinate across programs. States will be encouraged to build unified online portals and create locations where people can access multiple services in one place, and align substantial training resources available through the Pell Grant program with career services available through the workforce system. Vouchers and shared labor exchange and case management tools will be promoted to help workers access training and support seamlessly without navigating disconnected systems. Accountability outcomes must be evaluated using a consistent set of metrics across agencies, including job placement, earnings growth, credential attainment, and return on investment, and should account for the number of workers achieving positive labor market outcomes through the funding provided. And these results should be made transparent through public tools. Agreed. If we are funding the collection of the data, we should all get to see the data. Credentials will be judged based on the real value in the labor market. Ineffective training providers will be removed from public funding lists. Yay, new funding models will tie resources to outcomes, including through the expanded use of pay-for-performance contracts and stronger recapture authority to redirect dollars from programs that fail to deliver. And that's one of the things that I love about where I work. We just got our new classification as a professions-focused opportunity college, which is a really nice way of saying we take a lot of people that normally wouldn't go to college, do some remedial work with them, and get them out to being active, employed citizens. Crazy idea, but it can be done. Anyway, flexibility and innovation. So this platform, it must be designed for continuous iteration with exponentially faster feedback loops between employers, educators, and training providers to ensure programs can evolve in step with economic shifts. Agility must become a core design principle of the education and workforce system, which it totally has not been, at least the years I've worked in education. This means giving states and local communities more control to tailor solutions to their regional economies, and that would be good because Michigan does have a very unique economy. The departments will prioritize efforts to translate workforce shifts, particularly those driven by AI and other emerging technologies, into coordinated changes across the entire human capital development pipeline, including K-12 education, post-secondary learning, and workforce development. And to realize this pillar, the strategy will expand the use of tools like Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act waivers. Feel free to let me know if you know anything about that in the comments. I do not. And authorities that permit state or local governments to consolidate disparate workforce, training grants from multiple agencies, invest in outcome-based pilot programs, and redirect flexible funds towards state and employer-led innovation. So, strategic actions to create America's workforce vision. The following strategy outlines specific steps the Trump administration will take using existing budgets and authority to transform our workforce system into an employer-driven engine of prosperity. Also includes several substantial reforms that could be achieved through legislative changes. So the industry-driven strategy, scaling registered apprenticeships. The Trump administration is committed to expanding registered apprenticeship opportunities for American workers and set a bold target of reaching and surpassing 1 million active apprentices. All right. This expansion will be guided by the executive order directing the administration to develop a coordinated federal plan to strengthen and scale registered apprenticeships nationwide. Now, I don't know if the registered apprenticeships, being capital letters, is already a program that we are doing in the government. If you know more, please feel free to drop that in the comments. But it sounds like if it's not a program that we're already doing, it is definitely something that we are going for. So maximizing apprenticeship expansion will depend on revisiting and revising regulatory requirements to align with the administration's objectives and remove any undue burdens on apprenticeship sponsors, aka the employers. The Department of Labor will also address the registration and compliance challenges faced by multi-state employers, industry, and labor organizations, hello unions, so high-quality registered apprenticeships can more easily be scaled on a nationwide basis. The Department of Labor require applicants for competitively award funds to set targets for the number of participants placed into apprenticeships, and those receiving funding will be held accountable for delivering on those commitments. So the union just can't steal your money. Always a plus. We'll also incentivize state and local workforce programs, connect more of the Americans they serve to this proven model. Federal investments will target industry-specific strategies to scale apprenticeships in the sectors that are critical to American competitiveness, prioritizing occupations in demand for companies that engage with the Department of Commerce Investment Accelerator. I don't know anything about this investment accelerator other than the fact that it's referred to here. Again, if you know more, please leave it in the comments. I'm very curious. The departments will also strengthen the system by supporting high-impact intermediaries, leaving intermediaries as serving as group sponsors for programs involving multiple employers and joint labor management partnerships. Additional targeted approaches will be developed to enable the greater ecosystem support for small and medium-sized businesses, because they ain't got the time to navigate with the government that much, and to expand the use of degree apprenticeships, including identifying appropriate flexibilities that will make these models more viable. Shorter duration models, including pre-apprenticeships, internships, micro-internships, and other work-based learning models will be explored as potential on-ramps to registered apprenticeships, particularly those that offer structured progression towards employment and demonstrate strong labor market outcomes. That all makes sense to me. So aligning your education with your workforce needs to meet the industry skill needs of the future, departments will provide technical assistance and expand access to meaningful career exploration activities in K-12 education beginning in the 5th grade. Okay, I don't think that's middle school, but maybe that's just because I was like in the first class where they put they kept the 5th graders in our super exciting elementary school and didn't let us go on to middle school, which was, I think at the time was like 5th through 7th or 5th through 8th. But yeah, I remember we were all chuffed at that. Assuming chuffed is a negative, I don't know. Early career exposure starting in middle school will allow students to consider the full range of career options and ensure students remain invested in their interests, aptitudes, aspiration, and education and are prepared to transition into the workforce. Now that makes sense, kind of like Montessori. You need to apply education to things you're interested in or you won't be motivated to learn. Because intrinsic motivation is a thing. Students cannot know what they want to be until they have seen all that there is to be. The departments will provide technical assistance to grantees for partnership with employers to provide a progression of career immersion activities aligned to jobs in demand at the local, state, and national level, and are included in one or more of the 14 career clusters contained in the National Career Cluster Framework. Now, I did make fun of that first sentence I just said in this section that I highlighted, but it actually is pretty true because I did hear someone, I forget when, but it was some academic paper of some point basically saying that, like, oh, it was disability, that was it. Because they were talking about, like, how they applied for disability because everything in their area requires standing up and everything is a working class type job. And they had never seen anyone be able to work while sitting until they had gone to the disability office and saw the disability processor, paperwork processing people who were sitting there and doing work just sitting on their booty. So, yeah, you don't know that there are jobs out there that will let you sit down if you've been growing up in a working class environment where everyone's like in the factory or waiting tables or doing things that, require you to stand. So if you don't see it, you don't know it exists. On the plus side, the Gen Z is coming into a great career time in which there's going to be a lot of new jobs that never existed before. So, growing industry-specific training, including through incumbent workers. I can't remember if I mentioned it in this take or not, but yeah, we're not always the greatest in America at hiring from within, so I'm glad that the federal government is targeting those folks as well. So, for the administration to target investments toward critical industry needs and build a pipeline of skilled workers in priority industries, including shipbuilding, advanced manufacturing, not quite sure what that differs from basic manufacturing, energy production, particularly nuclear energy, so clearly they want to bring more of those online, and the AI development ecosystem. So, the Department of Labor will make an industry skills training fund that will support businesses in offering training programs, provide workers, including incumbent workers, with the skills needed to fill critical jobs in the local economy. States would provide outcome-based reimbursement to participating employers for costs associated with delivering industry skills training to build their workforce. Ensuring resources are simple to access for employers will be essential to success. Yes, because employers don't want to do any extra work either. In some cases, the only viable path into closing talent shortages in high priority industries will involve workers leaving current jobs to pursue new opportunities that better align with national economic needs. The departments will explore strategies to further incentivize and reduce the risk borne by individuals making these transitions, including through faster training pathways, stronger hiring commitments. By that, I think they mean like they will guarantee you employment for X number of years so that you don't have to and be in this fun, precarious, capitalistic life where they can just, bid you adieu whenever they feel like it, and more viable financial arrangements. And I highlighted education and labor just because I wanted to point out the two departments. So it seems like Trump's gutting the education department in order to move more of that work into the Department of Labor, which is fine. Everyone's allowed to do their own thing when they're president. This includes partnering in the administration of programs with Department of Labor, including CTE formula programs. And no, I don't know what CTE is. I think I looked it up, but I forgot. Funded by Perkins 5 and Perkins Impact and Modernization Grant Program, which identifies, supports, and rigorously evaluates evidence-based and innovative strategies and activities to improve and modernize CTE. PIM grant also ensures workforce skills taught in those programs align with labor market needs and engage businesses in determining those needs. I always hate it when they drop like an acronym in and don't define it. Personal pet peeve, I know. PIM grants drive alignment between CTE programs and public workforce system by requiring support of governors and state workforce boards for the grant applications. So the second pillar is about worker mobility. Yes, we only went through the first pillar. I know. It's a long one. I thought it was going to be shorter. I talk too much. Americans can find a clear on-ramp to high-wage opportunities without navigating bureaucratic confusion or running into dead ends in the system. That is the goal. To engage and support the disconnected workforce, departments will prioritize outreach to long-term unemployed and underemployed populations, including those that have left the labor force entirely, which is quite a few people these days. The enhanced work requirements for able-bodied adults without dependents, aka single people that can get up out of the dang bed and do something, enacted through the OBA, will fuel these efforts to reconnect Americans with the dignity of work. I'm just laughing because it's like, you guys gotta get out of bed and do something. Even if it's just doing the bare minimum to get your food stamps, which enough people are whining about as is. Anyway, the idea is this will help these individuals transition off public benefits, aka our money, and become economically self-sufficient. Capitalism wins. The workforce system can play a critical role in partnering with employers to help train individuals that lack the necessary skill sets and work experience by offsetting some of the wages paid to those workers on their quest to become fully productive. Targeted approaches will be developed for recruiting men 25 to 54 who are statistically the most disconnected from the labor force. Yeah, the men have given up. The men have just given up. Ladies, you can earn your own money and more than enough, so why? But yeah, this is kind of interesting that the government suggests that they're going to offset some of the wages that employers pay to workers by sending the money over to the employer side. It sounds like they're going to do that instead of actually giving people direct government benefits, which seems like a much better version to me, because at least that encourages, again, people to actually get up and work. Yes, you have to work. We all have to work. I'm sorry. This is how it is. It would also support workforce strategies that strengthen transitions into employments for populations such as veterans and individuals who are formerly incarcerated. I went down a little rabbit hole on this yesterday because I'm like, who discriminates against veterans? Like, I feel like that's like a positive discrimination. Like, you want the veterans because they're good and disciplined and will listen. But apparently people do, based on all sorts of reasons. But Anyway, the departments will work to establish self-sufficiency tools that will allow workers to determine the best pathway to enter paid employment and reach self-sufficiency. As part of this effort, the departments will explore flexibilities within their programs to help ease the benefits cliff and reduce the disincentive for career advancement, such as through waivers to allow for supportive services to be as permissible as a follow-up service after the individual has attained employment, if such services are structured in a manner to smooth the transition of public assistance programs. So they'll probably reduce your benefits once you start getting employed. I know everyone hates that. You're better off just sitting at home figuring out a way to work the system. But it sounds like they're willing or to, possibly continue some social services benefits as you are getting yourself up to speed in the high wage market. Because obviously, even if you get credentialed, you're probably not going to drop into the high wage job immediately. There's still going to be some sort of, 6 month to a year of learning on the job. Although maybe not. Maybe this whole thing is completely revolutionized. Anyway, to the extent possible, the Department of Labor will encourage states to leverage advanced technology-enabled tools to inform the development of individual reemployment plans. Oh my god, this sounds like individual education plans. And more effectively apply UI claimant data to reduce UI duration. That's unemployment insurance. Department of Labor will also work with states and opportunities to reform work search protocols within the unemployment insurance system to better align unemployment claimants with the quickest path to return to work and get off unemployment. Using technology to enhance career navigation and mobility. So departments will explore opportunities to scale high-impact tech-enabled navigation and coaching models and ensure tools are designed to empower workers while preserving the human connection that supports confident career decisions. Where feasible, departments will support states and grantees in embedding competency-based assessment tools into the participant intake and service lifestyle, including credit for prior learning tools to recognize prior experience, reduce duplication in training, and help workers advance based on demonstrated skills and abilities. And they will also use the deployment of AI-assisted tools to enhance participant intake, streamline eligibility determination, and connect job seekers to multiple programs without duplication. Modular utilities will simplify frontline staff workflows, and data sharing agreements will enable single-entry service platforms, the American dream, reducing burdens and ensuring real-time navigation of training and support options. Well, maybe it's not the American dream, because one centralized bureaucracy then becomes more powerful. So 6 one, half dozen the other there, kids. And virtual reality tools can also expand access to hands-on learning and simulate job environments, otherwise cost prohibitive to replicate. This is a lovely paragraph about embracing other tech besides AI. AI-driven personalization may also help tailor instruction to individual learners in ways that improve engagement and completion rates. Departments will support pilots and partnerships to test these technologies on high-demand sectors and will evaluate their potential to scale cost-effectively across the workplace system. Departments will support adoption of skills-based practices across education, workforce, and corporate human resources systems that prioritize demonstrability over formal credentials. Yes, we don't like those college degrees now, do we? Skills-based approaches can improve hiring, training, and advancement decisions when grounded in clear, job-relevant evaluations. We're also supporting the use of simulations and scenario-based assessments within career navigation, training programs, and hiring pipelines to validate job readiness. Modernizing workforce data and systems under Executive Order 14243, which I did not look up, but probably should have, includes promoting open source tools, supporting real-time skills data infrastructure, evaluating role and limitations of federal resources like ONET and Career One Stop, and upgrading data capabilities to maximize transparency and accessibility of federal data. Now, I haven't worked much with ONET, but I did bump into reading something else. I think it was the Claude Anthropic measurements today. Where they were talking about like how you match tasks, and I guess ONET has literally everything broken down into each individual task. I'm kind of curious to look up what my job is, but I have one of those fun job titles that doesn't map to anything, or at least not to anything that's universally recognized. Because it's like, oh yeah, there's a few year round. I remember going to a conference within the past couple of years where they were like, they basically read off my job title and they're like, what did they make? We don't know. I ended up putting something like the chat for that on Twitter, like, we exist and we do make money. But again, there's not enough of us to really give you a lot of data on that. I'm a special kind of librarian. All 3 departments will identify opportunities to unify federal education workforce data and establish a federal initiative that analyzes opportunities for coordination across longitudinal databases, P20 data sources, don't know what that is, administrative wage records, and related programs. So the goal is to ensure data from job seekers is captured only once. Again, would love that. States choosing to maintain their own workforce technology systems will be encouraged to ensure robust integration capabilities through standard application programming interfaces that allow authorized third parties to build job seeker tools that can easily share data with state workforce systems, reversing the long-standing pattern of closed-off state workforce technology ecosystems hampering innovation. Oh my God, we're bringing APIs to government software! So open, so transparent. The departments will also issue guidance allowing eligibility determinations and data collected for one program to be used for other programs where authorizations permit, to reduce duplicative paperwork and focus program and participant time on training and career activities. Department of Labor will also evaluate return on investment of existing American Job Center infrastructure and explore redesigning national access strategy to better reach today's workforce. This includes supporting states and localities in piloting alternative access points such as libraries. Yes, come here. We will help you get the job training. Identifying credentials aligned with industry demand, departments will develop a public credentials of value scorecard. Departments will review ongoing state and private sector initiatives to inform the creation of a national tool that enables employers, job seekers, career coaches, and other workforce stakeholders to compare education and training programs based on quality assurance criteria, including labor market outcomes, cost, duration, and credential type. This scorecard could integrate wage record data and credential transparency efforts to support informed decision making. Okay, the only problem I have with this, because again, it's always been so hard when you hire people with various degrees. Like, yeah, you can have a degree from like an Ivy League, but does that mean you actually know anything? I kind of like that, but I'm also freaking out about this integrated wage data, because does that mean if we pull in the IRS information, does that mean your like prospective employer gets to see what you used to get paid? Because that's not cool. Not that they can't go look it up because it's public information, but yeah, I always say that part in the intake form. It's like, what did you used to work for? And I'm like, none of your business. Inflation has happened, and you will have to pay me more either way. So I don't see why it matters. Departments will also strengthen alignment between state eligible training provider lists. I do not know what ETPL is, and outcomes data is. This can include issuing guidance, defining minimum quality standards for states, evaluating provider incomes using wage record data, and ensuring employers validate a need for the training, delisting programs that consistently poor performance, as mentioned earlier, or lacking industry relevance, and publishing comparative dashboards. There's like a nice comparative dashboard. Addressing common barriers to training enrollment completion. The departments will sponsor local initiatives to build trust, raise awareness, and offer supportive services such as childcare, transportation, and behavioral health support that help individuals overcome structural barriers to employment. These supports are often decisive on whether or not you can stay in college and pay attention. This was one of the things I got very upset at my previous employer to this one. We got a new president. He did not get the whole concept of like, we pitch the community college with the really high, well done childcare program so that you can drop your kids off here, go take your nursing classes, pick them back up in a few hours, and go about your business. And by closing our childcare facility, now you're, making the community college not function as well. So these things are definitely very, very important. And it's good that, the administration's thinking that way. We're also going to explore financing innovations that help shift the cost burden off workers, including deferred tuition, outcome-aligned student financing. Ooh, outcome-aligned student financing. That reminds me of the graded pay scale when you pay back your student loans, where you're like, do you want to take it relative to your income, or do you just want to pay a flat fee, which is what I did. And other mechanisms that account for financial risk workers often assume while pursuing, excuse me. So, how to remove license barriers to advance workforce mobility. Department of Labor will consider launching a coordinated federal analysis to identify industries and occupations where outdated or inconsistent licensing requirements are limiting labor market flexibility, particularly in sectors with persistent talent shortages. Yes, there are a lot of things that should be licensed for safety and other reasons, and then there's a lot of things that like the incumbents in whatever profession it is decided that they needed to put in licensing requirements in order to essentially keep the market to themselves and keep out other people. Unless you obviously have the money or the time to get the license. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that we could eliminate licensing requirements for. The analysis will examine how burdensome occupational licensing rules intersect with reemployment training efforts and will explore strategies to incentivize states to adopt reciprocity frameworks, modernize licensing systems, or test alternatives to licensure. Where appropriate, reforms may be tied to flexible federal funding or performance-based incentives to accelerate adoption. And some of this actually would be really good, like reciprocity frameworks for various licenses. So the bar exam is the one that pops in my head, although I can kind of understand why states don't do that because you need to know your own state's law in order to practice in that state. But teaching certificates, like I feel like that is something that could transfer state to state without much effort. Like if you can teach kids in one, you should be able to teach them in another, right? So maybe that'll help. Integrating the workforce pill. Oh my gosh, we're only down to pill with 3, and I'm still going. This might be another hour-long one, and my husband will be mad because I'll be home kind of late. Workforce Pell will allow learners to access Pell Grants for high-quality short-term workforce training. Programs that are aligned to immediate employment opportunities are key for raising the national labor force participation rate. Departments will work with governors and state workforce boards to identify high-quality programs leading to positive employment outcomes that should be eligible for Workforce Pell. The enactment of Workforce Pell Grants also creates new opportunities to better align WIOA services, including case management, career navigation, and employer engagement with training that can be supported through Pell Grants. And I kind of like this Workforce Pell Grant idea. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Maybe we'll get more students because we have a lot of certifications and retraining stuff here too. The MESA, the Make America Smart Again proposal described in the President's 2026 budget, which will consolidate multiple programs into a single grant for states' flexible use through WIOA reauthorization or through 26 appropriations provisions. Just as the Trump administration is reimagining how to integrate Department of Education programming into the Departments of Commerce and Labor Initiative, because we don't like the Department of Ed, the departments want to challenge states to similarly reimagine their structures, potentially killing off their local departments of Ed. To enable states to further streamline programs, the administration will work with Congress on a legislative proposal to establish an authority for states similar to PL 102-477, Authority for Tribes, and flexibility already available to territories. And I'm talking too long already, or I would look that up again. If I remember correctly, that was the one that essentially said that you could, I think it was like transfer skills amongst people, but I'm blanking on it. Sorry. End of the day, end of the workday. To reorganize federal statistical agencies and reorganize Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and the Census Bureau within the Department of Commerce. We gotta streamline the data collection. We also gotta streamline program administration, so departments will structure competitive grant opportunities, award funds to state applicants as allowable, who will integrate state workforce investments, and deliver industry-driven training through central points of access. Departments are actively seeking to simplify state staffing and governance requirements. A proposed rule will remove the Wagner-Pace and merit staffing relations that hamstring state efforts to integrate employment services with training programs. Okay, this is the one I looked up, the Wagner-Pace or merit thing, which talked about like basically sharing workers across state lines or governmental lines and how exactly you can do that. Again, if you know more, please feel free to put it in the comments. I feel like I'm going way too long with this. Departments will support governors in reorganizing service and delivery and agency organizations using maximum flexibility available within current law and providing intensive and ongoing technical assistance regarding waiver flexibilities that governors have at their disposal. So to build a unified federal workforce approach with Department of Labor as the convening agency, guess who won that fight in funding? To reform, redirect, or eliminating ineffective programs, and yes, I did highlight all this, so unfortunately I'm going to read it to you. Job Corps! I like the idea of Job Corps, and I probably would have gone into Job Corps if I had been allowed to. Is a failed experiment to help America's youth, and the Trump administration is concerned about the program's financial and sustainability and poor performance. Job Corps students do not consistently see improved workforce outcomes despite an exorbitant federal cost. Some centers spend more than $400,000 per graduate, and students facing similar barriers to employment will be better served in alternative programming at a fraction of the cost. Yes, we are very cost-aware in this government. In this administration, similarly, Senior Community Service Employment Program is ineffective and fails to consistently move seniors into unsubsidized, gainful employment. Why are we making the old people work? Young people shouldn't have to work. We're supposed to be, breeding so we have enough people to support the old people. Otherwise, we're going to have decisions to make. The administration proposes to eliminate both Job Corps and the Senior Community Service Employment Program in the 26 budget. The administration proposes to eliminate the Adult Education Program. The Education and Family Literacy Act is part of the public workforce system by statute as Title II of WIOA, but duplicates services provided by other WIOA programs. Administration proposes to substantially reform the federal work-study program to target it toward demonstrated industry needs, career-relevant employment, and learner-centered opportunities to serve low-income individuals. This sounds good on paper, but this does make me slightly worried as someone who works in higher ed, because we do rely on indentured servitude of the work-study students in order to be able to actually provide them jobs. Unfortunately, a lot of departments don't have a separate student worker budget, so if you don't have work study, we can't hire you. And it stinks, because I remember being a work study student and hitting this wall a lot, because it's like, oh, you don't have any more work study hours? Yeah, we ain't got money for you. So yeah, I like the fact that they are trying to go with career relevant employment. We're trying to do it here in the library, make things, more applicable to actual job skills. But I don't like this idea of overhauling work study even more, because, again, we need them in the universities. They do help us quite a bit. Departments of Labor, Education, and Commerce aim to shift awards to successful programs by allowing agencies to terminate grants failing to meet first-year benchmarks and re-obligating the funding to successful grantees. That's kind of interesting. We can yoink money. Departments will also support states and local areas in implementing the allowable but underused pay-for-performance authority, including promoting pay-for-performance contracting and strategies through discretionary grants and easing undue burdens that have stifled interest in pursuing this strategy. Okay. Pay-for-performance strategies direct funding toward providers that demonstrate real success in connecting people to high-wage jobs, hence the concept of performance, as opposed to just throwing money at the problem and hoping it gets better. Okay, streamlining the reporting administration. Streamline and reduce reporting burdens and focus on performance metrics that illustrate measurable impacts and reducing overall unemployment and progressing workers into higher paid jobs. This includes providing grantees with utilities that simplify data linkages for employment outcomes, easing a grantee reporting burden, and strengthening data validity, and publishing performance data in a single, easy-to-navigate website to clearly communicate outcomes to taxpayers. Crazy idea, I know. Information collection requests will be reviewed across all programs, and any data elements that are not statutorily required and do not advance the goals of the program will be junked. This approach builds upon the work of the Census Bureau's Evidence Group, which has developed an infrastructure to produce characteristics of workforce development training participants and use a standardized approach to gathering data on participants and linking that data to Census Bureau longitudinal data assets, including data on earnings and employment, in order to study the long-term outcomes of these programs for individuals, businesses, and communities. The data infrastructure, along with the Evidence Group's highly skilled social scientists analysts, enables the Census Bureau to rapidly deploy an analysis framework to build evidence to evaluate any type of workforce development program. Okay, the census got it going on. Which kind of makes sense because the census underpins so much. So if we were going to give money to a part of the government to overhaul its data services, the census makes good sense as a place to start. Departments will also pilot automation-friendly reporting infrastructure, AI, and test the transition from manual file-based submissions to automated API-enabled reporting infrastructure, which could submit data continuously through system-to-system connections and use AI-assisted validation tools to reduce error rates. Makes sense again. APIs could keep things up to date in real time as opposed to the manual little file monkey hitting the FTP server. And evaluating outcomes and impacts, departments will explore how to evaluate training programs based on earnings change participants' experience after completing the training. Departments will compare the participants' pre- and post-completion earnings with cost of program to assess program value, ROI. Beyond participant-level outcomes, reauthorized programs could directly measure program contribution to addressing systems-level talent shortages, such as the number of workers a program or system placed into priority industry and its impact on closing identified skill shortages in a region. And then we're going to talk about verifying work authorizations. So this is reviewed for individuals who are legally authorized to work, protecting high-paying jobs for American workers. Policies that are critical to ensure federal workforce programs are not misspending any taxpayer funding on individuals that ultimately cannot accomplish the goal of high-paying employment. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, it's monitoring the grantees. Excuse me. I thought that we were monitoring the people that were coming through. I'm like, well, kind of part of the problem is you gotta get them at a place where they can actually learn these things. Department of Labor will continue to encourage states and local workforce boards to provide more WIOA incumbent worker training, including through waivers of statutory caps as needed, updating priority of service guidance to clarify all job seekers remain eligible for WIOA programs, including incumbent workers. Department of Labor will also consider requests for waivers or pilot authority that enable partnerships with non-traditional training providers and support models that may fall outside WIOA's current approach for delivering training, particularly where they are directly tied to measurable labor market outcomes. Yeah. Makes sense. Departments also plan to maximize flexibility for tribes through the PL 102477 Authority, often referred to as the 477 program, which allows federally recognized tribes to consolidate their funding into a single award administered by Bureau of Indian Affairs in order to streamline administrative requirements and promote self-sufficiency through workforce and economic development. Tribes seeking to use the 477 program sometimes face difficulty in federal agency approval processes, limiting the number of tribes that benefit from this authority. Agencies will identify additional programs tribes could consolidate and will work with the Bureau of Indian Authority Affairs, to support tribes that want to shift towards a 477. And I did look this up and I have completely forgot it now. Sorry. And to establish AI workforce efforts and navigating ongoing impacts led by Department of Labor through Bureau of Labor Statistics and Department of Commerce through the Census Bureau and Bureau of Economic Analysis. Agencies will study AI's impact on the labor market by using data they already collect on these topics, such as the firm-level AI adoption trends, Census Tracks, and its Business Trends and Outlook Survey. These agencies could then provide analysis to support tracking of AI adoption, job creation, displacement, and wage effects. Further, the administration will establish the AI Workforce Research Hub under the Department of Labor to lead a sustained federal effort to evaluate the impact of AI on the labor market and the experience of the American worker, in collaboration with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the DOC, which I did not think they actually defined, Department of Commerce, through the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The hub would sorry, it's late in the day. The hub would provide recurring analysis, conduct scenario planning for a range of potential AI impact levels, and generate actionable insights to inform a workforce and education policy. Excuse me. Okay, this time I remembered to hit the record button again. To prioritize AI literacy and skill development, the Department of Ed will consider publishing a national framework around the core competencies and best practices for AI literacy education that are aligned to industry demand. To launch national networks of AI learning efforts, the administration will support creation of regional AI learning networks with employer-led, cross-sectional partnerships that serve as training and innovation centers for the AI economy. These networks are built on federal investments in advanced industries and be supported through competitive grants or award partnerships between employers, community colleges, and training providers. What about real universities? We can't participate? Special focus will be placed on ensuring all communities gain access to these opportunities. The departments will also convene a network of community college and university, good, AI centers to explore how to best integrate AI education across institutional offerings and equip graduates for an AI-driven economy. Deploy AI-focused pilots to drive rapid retraining. Department of Labor will leverage available discretionary funds where appropriate to fund rapid retraining for individuals impacted by AI-related job displacement. Department of Labor will issue clarifying guidance to help states identify eligible dislocated workers in sectors undergoing significant structural change tied to AI adoption, as well as guidance clarifying how state rapid response funds can be used to proactively upskill workers at risk of future displacement. Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Departments of Labor and Commerce will also rapidly pilot new approaches to workforce challenges created by AI, which may include areas such as rapid retraining needs, driven by worker displacement and shifting skill requirements for entry-level roles. These pilots will be carried out by states and workforce intermediaries using existing waiver and demonstration authority under the WIOA and Public Works and Economic Development Act, and will be designed to surface scalable, performance-driven strategies that help the workforce system adapt to the speed and complexity of AI-driven labor market change. Alright, so in closing, in summary, the America's Talent Strategy, Building the Workforce for the Golden Age, delivers an industry-led blueprint to secure America's economic strength by establishing robust talent pipelines in vital sectors while creating clear, efficient pathways for millions of workers to access high-wage careers by unifying federal programs, harnessing data-driven tools, and empowering states, employers, and regional partnerships to drive sector-focused action. The Trump administration will close critical skills gap, boost labor force participation, and drive sustainable growth. These reforms will arm American businesses with the skilled workers they need and ensure American workers can claim the jobs that build our nation's future prosperity. That all sounds well and good, right? What do you think? Do you think this is going to work out within 4 years for the T-Man? Or do you think this is a little bit too ambitious? This whole let's rework the government in order to make it more efficient, which is definitely a good goal in any administration, but is it going to work here? Are we going to be able to convince Gen Z to finally get in the workforce? What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And again, thank you for tuning in. I know this one was longer than I anticipated. I was really hoping for a half hour.